I've drawn for nearly a decade and I've been in art school for almost 2 years, and these are the 25 most effective exercises that have changed my art from this to this, and I think they'll help you too. These exercises have been directly taken from professionals like Peter Han, Tom Fox-Draws, Stephen Hampton, Antonio from ArtWad, and Jung Gi. And they've been separated into 5 levels to make it easy to progress from levels 1 to 5. So without further ado, let's get into exercise number 1. Starting at level 1, exercise 1, we're going to do curved and straight lines. These are the absolute basics to get your hand cooperating with your mind. You want to draw 3 sets of lines, one using your wrist, the next using your elbow, and the last using your whole arm. Go over each of them 8 times, and this will train your hand-eye coordination as well as your muscle memory. This one is recommended by Peter Han in his book, The Dynamic Bible. Number 2, point coordination. Put a point on your paper and draw a straight line through it, starting on one side of the dot and ending on the other. The further away you start from the dot, the more difficult it is. Make sure your lines are straight and cut through the dot. This exercise is meant to train your hand-eye coordination as well as getting you used to drawing with your shoulder. Exercise 3, flattening planes. Draw a progressing series of squares, starting from a straight line and turning inward until you reach the flat-facing square, then rotating away until the square becomes flat again. Then do the same thing with a circle. If you're uncomfortable doing this with the circle, begin with the square and you can fit your circle into the square. You might have a question, how do I match the ellipse to the degree of the square? That's going to be shown later in the video at level 3. Exercise number 4, parallel ellipses. Draw a straight line and draw ellipses that are centered by that straight line. The ellipses can be varying in size. Just make sure that they're perpendicular to the line. These exercises are critical in observational drawings like these vases or even these fish. Exercise number 5, ribbons. Draw a random curvy line somewhere on your page and then repeat that same line and connect them with parallel lines. The exercise here is to get used to repeating the same line as well as seeing depth on the page without the need for a perspective grid. Okay, that's it for level 1. That should get your hand on the same page as your eyes as we move on to level 2, where we're doing more cognitive, abstract imagination. If you're fairly new to drawing, I'd recommend doing this every day, only for about 5 to 10 minutes, just to get your muscle memory activated and quickly have your hand on the same page as your eye. Exercise number 6, extrusion. Similar to the ribbon, draw a shape and then repeat that shape elsewhere on the page and connect them with lines. The further you draw your shape, the more depth your object is going to have. If you're having trouble thinking of shapes, start simple. Think of a simple square, think of a trapezoid, a rhombus, a diamond shape, and as you get more advanced, you can do letters. Exercise number 7, box stacking. Draw boxes that feel like they're stacked on top of one another. You can draw them uniform, but as you get more comfortable, try to rotate them in different directions and expand the scope of your scene. If you're new to this exercise, you want to draw through your boxes with construction lines so that you can really visualize the space that these boxes are taking up. Exercise number 8, cylinders. Draw a bunch of cylinders stacked together or going back in space. Imagine a snake cut in half and think about how the volumes would look. With these basic volume exercises, the goal is to get to a level where you don't need a perspective grid to visualize these. You're probably not going to start out this way, so feel free to use as much construction as you want in the beginning, but really try to think through these objects and always imagine that you are actually seeing these objects. The best metaphor I've ever heard for perspective is to imagine that your piece of paper is just a window, and what you're seeing in the paper is just the other side of a world that you're looking directly at. You want your objects to feel like they have a solid mass. Now, obviously, that's easier said than done. If you can't yet visualize forms stacking together, then continue watching the video because there are some exercises that specifically target that. Exercise number 9. This one is also from Peter Han. It's organic forms. Create a random blob-like shape and draw a line through it. This line is the center line of the shape, and create contours around the blob to give it a sense of three-dimensionality. You want to be unique without being too complicated here. The goal of this exercise is to gain a sense of form from a 2D shape. You want to be able to draw a shape and visualize how contours might give it some depth. If you want to take this one step further, you could shade the form as a bonus, or create branching forms to ramp up the complexity. And exercise number 10 is an exercise from Zefdraws, who is a fantastic illustrator and also on YouTube, so check him out after this video. And the exercise is stacking and queuing. Draw a series of forms lined up in space, going vertically and horizontally. Imagine how the perspective would shift as they go from the left side of your vision to the right, and from the bottom of your vision to the top. The point of this exercise is to develop your sense of intuitive space. Obviously, once again, this is going to be a really difficult exercise to do without construction if you've never done it before. So take what you know about the basics of one-point perspective and apply the perspective grid to the forms and attempt to build out your forms with the grid. Now, you will inevitably come across some confusions, and the grids are not going to perfectly fit the forms you see. My recommendation is to start by copying the artists that you love. So, for example, copy the drawings I'm doing right now, or copy the drawings from Zefdraws' YouTube channel. By the way, all the artists who are referenced in this video will be linked down below, so you could go look at their work for yourself. I highly recommend it. They're professional. I'm not, so take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt and check out the original stuff. While you're down there, if you don't mind leaving a like, that would be fantastic and super helpful for me to continue doing this. Thank you guys. Let's get to level 3. Level 3 is about manipulating the basic forms that we've been practicing at level 2 and getting into some rendering so we can represent the world as it seems. This next exercise is the most important one in this list. Without this, your ability to draw from imagination is shot. And that's the cube grid by Krenz Kuchart. Here's the original that you guys have asked about, and you can reference this, but here's me demonstrating how it's done. This is the most important exercise to being able to draw from imagination, because all a cube is the most basic representation of a unit of space. So if you don't understand how to visualize a cube from any angle, you don't understand how to visualize a unit of space from every angle. Therefore, you're never going to be able to represent anything more complex. If you can't draw a cube in any angle, you won't be able to draw a head in any angle, at least not from imagination. So if you're going to practice anything in this video, please make sure it's the cube grid. Exercise number 12, rotation. Draw the basic forms in rotation. You want each drawing to feel like a sequence from the last drawing, and ideally they're rotating along a single axis. This will take a little bit of getting used to, but the point of these exercises is not to get it perfect, it's to do them to build your ability to visualize in space. So the more you can do them, the better you're going to draw. Once rotating the basic forms gets easy, try to rotate certain letters. Start with a T, or then maybe go on to a Q, and you'll notice that the complexity builds as well. Exercise number 13 is bending. Take a basic form and bend it forward and backwards. Try to twist it. What's going to make or break the believability of your bending here is overlap. Make sure you're very aware of the overlap as you're drawing these forms, because that is the only way we can convey depth with a line. Once again, this is a major topic that Stephen Hampton covers in his figure drawing books, which will once again be linked down below. Exercise number 14 is addition. Create a unique form by adding other forms to it. This can be a cylinder added to a cube, or a sphere added to a cylinder. The idea is to take the basic forms that you should now be comfortable with and combine them together to create new and unique forms. To reinforce your understanding, rotate these forms and draw them from multiple different angles. You could also look at basic household objects for inspiration in this case. Exercise number 15, flat textures. At this level, we have a solid foundation of form, but we want to now get into rendering. But before we can apply textures or rendering to a volume, we need to know how that texture looks flat. So that's where flat texturing comes into the picture. Start simple with basic hatching. The idea is to go from a completely dark value to a completely light value. Once you've done that with hatching, move on to cross-hatching. Then move on to patterns or textiles. As you get comfortable texturing, build complexity by going into scales or fur. There's a whole wealth of things you could reference. Just looking around my room, I see a wood texture, I see a corkboard texture, I see a fur texture. You can reference all sorts of textures and attempt to draw them as a gradient. For more information on that, check out Peter Hahn, because this is again where this exercise comes from. It's absolutely critical to rendering anything past a basic volume. At level 4, we're getting a bit more complex. Exercise 16 is the 3-box figure. We want to capture the human body in terms of the 3 major masses: the head, the rib cage, and the pelvis. Your goal is to get comfortable representing these masses in any pose that you'd like. By simplifying these masses into basic boxes, you can visualize how they would twist and bend without needing reference or an image to follow. This is your first step into drawing people from imagination. The aim is to push the posing to really sell the orientation of the pelvis, chest, and head. You can use sticks for the arms and legs and emphasize the joints with blocks. To go further with this exercise, ditch the reference and draw these poses from your imagination. Exercise 17, subtraction. This one is more difficult because you have to visualize a lot more than you would in other form manipulations like addition. My best advice here is to start simple. Start by subtracting a cube from a cube, or a rectangular prism against another rectangular prism. Things start to get complicated when you have to visualize what curved surfaces react to other curved surfaces. For example, a sphere being taken away from a cube is a lot more difficult than a cube being taken away from a cube. So start simple until the basics get boring. Start with construction, and once you're used to that, try to go into visualizing subtractions without construction. Exercise number 18 is perspective clusters. Draw an amalgamation of random forms in a believable space using everything you've learned so far about addition, subtraction, and extrusion. Try to combine them, try to vary them in size and shape and orientation. Have some objects going towards you, have some objects going away from you. Overall, just try to create a believable sense of forms without necessarily having them mean anything. Number 19, volume mapping. This is where we take the flat textures we practiced in level 3 and apply them to an organic form that we practiced in level 2. By combining these two, we're starting to give volume and texture to an object. You can use this skill to render a mammal with fur, or even give a character tattoos that wrap around their arm. This is the foundation of rendering volumes believably. And exercise 20 is to take a drawing from a master that you admire. That could be Jung Gi. In this case, it's Kim Dong-ho, and copy their drawing. Learn from their line work, learn from their use of form, their use of shapes. And by doing this study, you're going to learn how to do it right before doing it for yourself. And that brings us to level 5. This stage is by no means basic. All these exercises take an understanding of all the previous exercises from before, as well as a well-developed sense of space. Exercise number 21 builds upon the 3-box figures that we were working on in level 4 by fleshing them out into full-blown mannequins. This time, instead of representing the limbs through simple lines, we're going to represent them with more accurate volumes. The idea is that you start with references, and as you get more comfortable, you draw these mannequins from your imagination. If you want to go more complex with this exercise, have them interacting in space or reacting to one another. Exercise number 22 is to draw an object of reference from a different angle than what is being observed. This will train your brain to register your reference as a three-dimensional form instead of simply an image, and you're going to have to do the work of rotating it inside your head and understanding what it might look like from another angle. This ability is what Jung Gi had built intuitively, and is why he was able to draw anything he wanted from any angle. You could look around your room and just pick an object to draw, or you could go online to find reference and draw that reference from a different angle. Exercise number 23 is a point of view drawing. If you want to draw from your imagination, it is crucial that you understand how space works, and that's why this exercise is so important. It's no coincidence that Jung Gi has hundreds of these drawings. Rembert Montalд has hundreds of these drawings, and Dong Ho Kim, who we've previously looked at, has done hundreds of these as well. If you are unsure how to go about doing this, I would start by doing a master copy of any of the artists previously mentioned. Paul Heaston is one to check out as well, because he specializes in doing this. This exercise builds your sense of space as it is observed in real life. Rather than thinking in 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, you understand space intuitively, and your sense of perspective is freed up to draw things as you would want to see them instead of being stuck to a formula. Exercise number 24 defined Jung Gi's upbringing and very much led to the artist he was today, according to himself.
일기를 계속 그렸었어요. 그래서 뭐 여름방학이면 여름방학 동안 하루에 있었던 일 중에 기억에 남는 한 장면을 그리는 거예요.
And that is the daily highlight. Recount your day and pick a highlight and then attempt to draw it. This exercise is so useful because it integrates all the previous exercises we've mentioned, from spatial drawing to basic forms, but even more in that it incorporates storytelling techniques. It makes you have to draw an illustration from your imagination, and because it's so difficult, it is also so helpful. If you can get over the frustration of making ugly pieces consistently, then this is one that will unlock your ability to draw whatever you want. And finally, we have exercise number 25. Another one recommended by Jung Gi. At this stage, he was the only one given this level of complex exercises, but the final exercise is the comic book. Similar to the daily drawing, take a random story or design a room and draw several shots visualizing different areas of the room while consistently maintaining the forms that have been established. If you can do this, you are building your ability to not only tell stories, but to design and create concept work on the fly. There's a reason that this exercise is the last one, because it is the hardest one. Not only are you designing a story on the fly, you have to maintain consistent volumes, you have to visualize several different shots, and all the while do it without reference and preferably without construction lines. As you're starting these exercises, of course, you're going to need those, but the aim is to get to a level where you can do all these exercises without a ruler and without construction lines. By the time you're at that level, then you will have no struggles drawing what you see. But what about implementation? How should you be implementing these exercises? Is there a specific way I'd recommend? Well, the way this was designed is for it to be a ladder you can climb. I'd recommend starting at level 1 every day and doing the basic warm-ups, and then going to level 2 and building your ability to draw the basic forms. Most people don't spend enough time at level 2, myself included, and having practiced just level 2 and 3 exercises, I think most of you guys will see drastic improvements, as I personally have for myself. I'd spend probably 30 minutes every day warming up with level 1, 2, and 3 exercises, and the idea is to, let's say you do a level 2 exercise until it gets boring, then go to a different exercise in level 2 until that gets boring, then go to the next one. Bounce laterally across all the levels until each of them are able to be done without construction grids and you can visualize them in your mind, and then progress on to level 3 and then level 4. That's my recommendation, but as long as you're doing some of these exercises somewhat regularly, I think you will see consistent improvement. Anyway, I hope you guys learn as much from these exercises as I have. I'll see you next video.